you know these men were involved in your abduction?
All of Mexico can listen to these conversations and hear for themselves how corrupt some of our politicians and officials are. I intend to take this case to the federal court and file a suit against the governor for bribery, conspiracy to rape, and abuse of authority.
Lydia Cacho, we met in Oslo at a global forum on freedom of expression event, and she was making one of the keynote speeches. And we remember sitting in the audience, sort of looking at her, going, "Wow, you're good. We want you," and just sort of harassing her basically over lunch.
In a country like Mexico, rule of law is very, very weak, and you have the most devastating war going on, essentially, which is the drugs war. It's an incredibly dangerous country for journalists.
Very surprising to realise that Mexico is the second most dangerous place for journalists after Iraq. Absolutely, when you get into the nuts and bolts of the situation, to have your perception of a country completely altered.
She's totally aware and of what she faces and gets death threats all the time. In fact, just this week, she's been getting more.
I suppose they remind themselves why they're doing this and why it's important to them, and who they're doing it for as well. Obviously, she has a really strong relationship with the people who she protects, or the stories she writes about those people. They kind of motivate her to carry on even when it seems impossible.
I was made to believe that I would die if I didn't say that all of the evidence in my book was made up and that all of the girls were liars. I thought about the girls and I kept remembering that they all said they would tell their story to me because they didn't want other girls to be raped or abused, and I thought that was so brave and so powerful that they were willing, after being exposed to these terrible things, to go through their own pain in order to protect other girls they didn't know.
They've done something really unique and unusual with this play in making very important stories and very important issues something that you can go out to and have a nice evening on town and enjoy a play and also come away from it enriched and with some more knowledge.
Thinking about where we make those choices in terms of how to play a person based on our research, in terms of how we edit the material to be both fair to the source but as dramatic as possible so it's engaging for the audience.
It began as much more as a verbatim play, and then we felt like we wanted to make sure that as well as telling the stories sort of factually, we wanted people to be able to really emotionally engage with who these journalists are and their stories. So we began to feel increasingly like we ought to try and reconstruct them, and that was basically a bit of a process of experimentation.
The biggest challenges in staging on the record have been trying to manage the coexistence of verbatim material and dramatic reconstruction, about trying to help the actors into 5 very different regions of the world, because there's a huge amount of information and it's about where you draw artistic lines, about about how we focus interpretation, because work is interpretation.
Most of the characters have a very dramatic incident that kind of defines their story, and to not exploit that in the theatre seemed a very silly idea.
The stories, I think, lend themselves to drama very well as the production shows, and the way that the dramatic events have been reconstructed in the play works incredibly well. The minute you put something into a theatrical context, it humanises it, and it isn't picking up an article or standing outside an embassy with a banner. It personalises it, and it means that people start to feel empathy, perhaps also identification with the stories.
I suppose the play in a way is 6 examples of what good journalism is and can be, the risks it involves, and also challenging some of the preconceptions of journalism.
People form ideas based on what they hear in the news, and everything is affected by the news. I mean, the bottom line is your average everyday person, they've never been in a major disaster. They've never been in a conflict zone. They've never, most of them have never been to a third world country. So their views of what these situations are like, what these circumstances are like, are based on what they hear. And when that information is filtered, they can't form a true opinion and a true idea of what these situations are. And without, I think, an educated public, I don't think any good quality decisions of any kind can be made.